Welcome to episode 2 of Trail Times with Big Bear Events. I'm recording this on Sunday the 26th of January, just in case any of it's time relevant. This is after the Squirrel Challenge that took place on Friday the 24th of January at Daventry Country Park, which went very successfully, which we'll talk more about in a moment. And after my little trip to the National Running Show, which is still on at the moment, but I went yesterday to see what was going on there. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And there's some other news as well, some a competition winner and some Big Bear news that won't make very people happy, but it's news nonetheless. So you'll hear it here first on the podcast. So for the millions and millions of you that are listening and watching, you'll be the first ones to hear about it, which, like I say, isn't the best news for loads of you, I don't think, but we'll be going through it anyway. So, firstly, I've very, very humbled by the lovely feedback that I've had from lots of people regarding listening to the first episode and to the trailer as well. Thank you very much. Nobody's told me that it's absolutely awful, which just means that you're all very kind people. Hopefully these get better and better the more I do. Doing them on YouTube has created just 10 times the amount of work, because it means that I can only record these when my wife's not working on the other side of the office that you can't see on that side, and when the kids aren't going to disturb me as well. So I'm sneaking this in while they're at a club, so that will also limit the amount of waffle that I give, which is obviously a good thing for you, so it's worked out okay. But yeah, really, really nice to hear people listening to it. As I said to somebody, I want millions to listen to it, but I don't want to meet anybody that has listened to it just for the embarrassment. I've said already, this isn't really my bag. This is very much out of my comfort zone, but I do think it's a good way to communicate with people, because it's just the best way of doing it. So you can be washing up, you can go out for your run, you can be doing anything, and you can just have a podcast on and you can be listening. Whereas if I put it in an email or social media, anything like that, you just scroll through it. I don't even really read emails anymore, apart from obviously the important event emails where I read every sentence, but I don't read sort of advertising type emails. So I think this is a better way of trying to get some of those messages out. So hopefully it's not going to feel like an advert, because that's not the intention, but it means that I can discuss things that have happened, and it's a different way of doing it. So we'll keep going along, but I'm enjoying it and nobody's told me to stop immediately, so I'll carry on. So what we'll start with is the Squirrel Challenge, which took place on Friday. I'm currently in our office at the bottom of the garden, essentially a big shed, and it's incredibly windy today, but on Friday morning it was even worse. So I barely slept on Thursday night into Friday. Well, I got woken up a lot anyway, just because of the wind. The wind woke me up all night, so that was a little worrying to wake up to. But the difference between Rugby and Daventry, the wind seemed to drop a little bit and the rain went pretty much straight away. So I arrived on site at about 6:45. Thought I'll go and check a small bit of the course just to make sure that the signs are all up. Realised that the first arrow had been ripped down, and so I thought, great, this is going to be an excellent start to my day. So the route for Daventry, where we've changed it, so I've changed the route since we've been there 2 years ago, I think it was. So whereas before we used to go out, essentially do a loop and then run all the way back, and the course was quite long, it was nearly 4 miles, the country park have been given effectively a new bit of country park on the back of a brand new housing estate, when I'm pretty sure when we were there last time none of those houses were there. If there were a few of them. Now there's a 400 or 500 housing development there that's finished. So they've now been given a new section of country park with brand new paths, all concrete, but brand new paths around a nice little lake as well, really nice and pretty. So the route now goes out, does a loop of that, comes back onto the main country park, and then you do a whole loop of the country park. So effectively it's a one lapper, but that little out and back, there's a slight crossover as you go in and out, which is nice because it means that you actually get to see people rather than either just overtaking them or just being overtaken. When you're running sort of head on to each other for a small section, it's nice to say, well done, rather than feeling like all you're seeing is the backs of people as they run away from you. So it is nice to have a small section like that. Personally, I'm not a fan of putting in straight out and backs because then you sort of feel like you're running to nowhere. I appreciate I'd put on looped events, but when it's out and back, it feels a bit torturous to do that last little bit where you can see a cone that you're just going to run around or something. Anyway, so I thought I'd go and check that small section, and I guess because it's near a housing estate, there's probably kids and dog walkers. It's not always the kids, it's more often than not middle-aged male dog walkers, and the majority of the arrows have been ripped down, which is a real pain in the arse for me in the morning, but it's also just a waste. It's just such a waste of my time and my arrows, because I don't know where they are. So somebody's just ripped them off. Obviously they didn't realise that we use reusable zip ties, and they could have just pulled them off and kept the arrows intact. And they're probably just thrown them in the bin or thrown them in the bush or whatever. So it's just annoying. But anyway, so I went and sorted that out in the morning. And by the time I'd finished that, the rain had stopped, which was handy. And it just meant that the day was not a great start. But luckily, when I arrived, I saw some people walking dogs in the dark with head torches. I was like, oh, mate, have you been round? Are there any trees down? And he's like, oh, we've just started. But then when I'd then finished doing my little bit, they happened to then wander past me. And they're like, oh, you asking about the trees earlier, weren't you? It's like, yeah. And it's like, oh, one tree's come down, but you can get around it. Okay, so, okay, fine. And at Daventry, Alan, the ranger there, just absolute legend, brilliant, really helpful, can't do enough for you, just top bloke. So he then turns up in his little John Deere Gator. He's like, oh, there's a tree down. I was like, yeah, no, it's just around the corner. So he went and cleared that before anybody had turned up. And the people walking their dogs were like, oh, it's only a small tree. But what they hadn't quite sort of realised was there was a small bit on the path, but the actual tree that had fallen down was a big tree, just happened to be 10 metres back from the path. So that was all cleared. So we got away with that, really, because if a big tree falls down in the middle of the path, you can only clear it so quickly. I can't be too demanding on the forest or on the parks, because they do have like jobs to do as well. So that was cleared, that was good, the race could start. And to be honest, as much as we were technically in the middle of a yellow weather warning, yellow, amber, yellow, whatever the lowest weather warning is, it was a bit windy and a bit gusty at times, which is never much fun with gazebos, but it wasn't too bad. I think we've done events in worse when there's not been weather warnings. Because of where we are at Daventry Country Park, the HQ area is quite sheltered by other trees and things. So that was quite good. We've definitely had worse. I think in terms of the runners, they sort of dodged a bullet pretty much, because every single one of them from the front to the back of the pack didn't complain, but mentioned how you sort of ran out and then you did essentially a 90-degree turn and just straight into the headwind. So that section only lasted maybe, I don't know, quarter of a mile, if that. But that same direction, there was a much longer section where they're going in the same direction, but luckily that was within the trees. So if those trees weren't there, there'd have been about a mile just straight into the wind, and that would have been quite a hard day out. But I don't think it really affected the day at all. And to be honest, it was bright blue skies, sunny all day. So it was a lot better than what I thought it was going to be when I saw it on the Tuesday. On the Tuesday, the forecast was really quite bad, and I thought this might end up having to get called off. So people always ask, so a bit of behind the curtain stuff. In terms of calling events off, there's no real hard and fast rule with it. The only real stipulation with it is if I'm using a Forestry England site, so that's Saucy Forest. I don't pronounce it right. It's Saucy or Soucy. We've been going for 8 years. I don't get it right ever. So it's one of the two. Cannock Chase, Fine Shade, and quite a few other ones that we don't necessarily use as much anymore. But if it's a Forestry England site, I believe if the forecast is over 50-mile-an-hour gusts, they close the forests. So if the forest is closed, I can't put my event on. And so if it's getting to a point where they're closing forests, just because somebody else hasn't closed the forest or their wood or their park, doesn't then make it safe somewhere else. So if things start to get over that level, that's when it then effectively comes down to my judgment. There's not a magic person that turns up and says, your event is off. You have to make that judgment call. And cancelling events, as much as I don't have loads of outlay that I would necessarily lose as such, but people will want refunds, or they'll want transfers, or they'll be annoyed and whatever. So I lose money there. And obviously if I'm moving all those entries onto somewhere else, that's sort of money that I'm not making further down the line. So I never, ever, ever want to cancel events, apart from, until COVID turned up, you never cancelled events anyway. Then COVID turned up and events were cancelled due to COVID. And I don't know exactly how many events I put on, but it's over 100, getting close to 120 now, I think. And there's only been one event that we've had to cancel for any other reason, and that's because my wife got COVID. I think maybe, I might get these dates wrong now, but I think it was just before the second lockdown. So we're still sort of in COVID times. But she got COVID, and this was when you had to isolate and you couldn't do all these things and so on and so on. And so we couldn't get the kids to school, but she couldn't look after the kids either because she couldn't sort of leave the bedroom. So it was a nightmare. But we're going back years. So I've not had to cancel anything since then. Hopefully I never will have to. But the weather is the weather. We're talking January. What can you do? So it was nowhere near as bad as I or the majority of people that turned up thought it would be. And it was a great start to the year. As promised, I did do some recording from the event. So we'll listen to a little bit of that now. You'll notice that everybody's holding little microphones, but none of them worked. So it's sort of like a toy prop. So where the sound quality, where they sound a bit quieter than me, it's because essentially I'm holding the phone, shouting into the phone, trying to be picked up on the microphone that they're holding, but the microphone isn't working, so I'm just shouting at a microphone that is on the phone right next to my face, and they're not shouting because they think they're talking into a microphone. So technically world class, but hopefully it's not too bad. Any of them where it is really quiet, I apologise. I'll try and raise the sound a little bit on them, but it's all lessons for next time. So we're going to hear from Amory, Phil, Elaine, and then Carl and Yvonne as well. And we're going to hear a bit of my waffle as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see what the conditions are like as well. If it's on Spotify, I think you can watch it on Spotify as well. So we'll go to those little clips, and then I'll ramble some more. So this is Daventry Country Park. This is the Squirrel Challenge, and this is me trying to film some podcast stuff at an event. So we've got a few people coming over the line. They'll be heading straight back out. As you might be able to see, if you are watching rather than listening, I've picked possibly the muddiest section of the whole of the country park, and that's not an exaggeration, to put the finish line, which means that everybody has to cross over it to finish each lap. It wasn't intentional, but is sort of funny at the moment. Hopefully in 6 hours time I'll still think it's funny, rather than having an accident. It's a bit muddy, it's a bit grimy out here, but the weather is a lot better than it was forecast to be. The swans want some food. It's a lot better than it was forecast to be. It is windy, but beautiful blue skies, nice temperature, just generally a really nice day out. If this all goes well, you might hear some little clips with me chatting to some other people as well. What's more embarrassing is people running around saying, "Oh, I'm listening to the podcast." But I'll get over that hopefully. How'd you get on?
Yeah, I had a really good run. Came here to do a couple of laps, maybe 3, but it was a little bit windy and cold. But the route is absolutely stunning. I really like the fact that it's one lap now. The new country park bit where there's the new houses is great. Really pretty. Great food on the feed station as well. It's nice to stop and have a little break, grab a little snack, and then keep going. So I had a really good time. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Cheers, Anne-Marie.
Yeah.
So, Phil, how far did you go, and what are the plans for the year? Good start. It's all right. We're still rolling. We're keeping that in. Yeah, we're keeping that in.
Just went under 10 miles today. Some plans for the year is I'm working towards OCC as a part of the UTMB race, so going via Tokyo Marathon and then UTS down in Snowdonia. Thanks very much, Paul. Great event.
Right, so well done, Elaine. So, how many Big Bear events have you been to?
Probably about 31 now.
Okay. Do you know when your first one was?
July 2019 here.
Oh, Daventry.
It was extremely hot.
Yeah. Is it as hot today?
No.
No. Okay.
And it was extremely windy today.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good event. I remember that 2019 one.
Yes.
And how have you found today? How have you gone today?
It was okay, apart from fighting the wind across the dam wall, and on the loop was a bit windy as well. So, but yeah, otherwise, and it was dry. That's the main thing.
Yes, dry.
I prefer the wind to the rain.
Excellent. Cool. Cheers, Elaine.
Thank you very much.
How have you got on today then, Carl?
All right so far. I've still got a few laps to go, but it's a nice route, nice scenery. It's just the wind that's spoiling it a little bit.
So, a few laps to go, but we're sitting on a picnic bench. So, obviously, I know that's fine, but that's how we do it here, right?
Yeah, the joys of these sort of events are you can run a lap, have a rest, run another lap, walk a lap, go to your car. Just got to keep going forward.
Perfect. How have you got on today, Yvonne?
Brilliant, absolutely buzzing. Got a half marathon in, which I've not done in 5 years. Never thought I'd do it again, and 100% did it because there's no pressure here.
So, this is what a Big Bear aid station looks like. So we're halfway through the event, pretty much, 3 and a bit hours, and look, they're not all running, taking the time, doing what they want to do. Some have finished, some haven't, some will keep going, some will stop. You know, they're sitting down there in a chat, not high-paced, getting them out sort of energy, just having fun. So, hopefully, that's all been seamlessly put in there, and also hopefully you've heard my little I think they call them stings in the business, where I've sort of clipped up sounds from other videos we've done to link between each thing. If it sounds awful, please let me know so I won't do it again, but hopefully those little stings just go between each one so it doesn't sound like a complete car crash of loads of sound files going together. So yeah, it was a great day. Really did enjoy getting back out there. It's been 2 months since the last event. It's a really nice place to start. Lots of support in Daventry from the local runners, really, from Daventry Road runners and from the local clubs as well. Just really good. It's sort of alarming / enlightening. I don't know what the correct word is, but when we held an event effectively on the same day last year at Fine Shade Wood, near Corby, Peterborough sort of way, I had about a third, 2/5 of the same amount of people. I don't know, half, not many people turned up for that event, and I thought, oh, maybe it's because of the date. And then I looked at the detail a little bit more, and effectively all of my runners had come from Coventry, Northampton, Rugby area, and just gone out an hour down the A14 to go and run there. And I didn't attract any locals. So Peterborough is 20 minutes away, 250,000 people live there, and no entries. So I've realised, stick to where the people are, stick to where my, I don't like the term, fan base is, around Northampton and Rugby and Coventry, and then we'll get good numbers at the events. Having 110-ish starters, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Really nice atmosphere, really nice environment, perfectly manageable, not too crowded out on the course, not too crowded at the aid station, works brilliantly. And without sounding like a sort of cold-hearted capitalist, at those numbers, I can make money that makes it worthwhile as well. Ultimately, it is a business, but I don't like that's not the first reason to have more numbers, because I don't want it to be much bigger. Any more than 130, 140, and suddenly the events become a bit too big, and I can't speak to everybody individually. Gets rid of that sort of personal touch, which is sort of what all this is about. It's sort of like when your favourite band gets too big, or when the little brewery that you used to use suddenly sells into Sainsbury's. It's different. Might be the same sort of thing, but it just feels different. So numbers between 100, 120, 130 on the day, perfect. Really, really good. So some little stories from the event as well that didn't come through. So our actual winner, who ran the furthest in the quickest time, which sounds like a strange caveat to put on it, but that is technically how you come first on the results list, was Jeroni Ferrer, which I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but he is Spanish, and so he's come from Barcelona. So I think this might be our first international athlete. So he's come from Barcelona to Daventry to run this event. I don't think, so I did speak to him at the end, and his wife as well. They didn't come specifically for this, although I'm sure that was really why they came. But they came over for the weekend to come on holiday to go and sort of go around Birmingham. They said they're going to on Saturday. I don't think the run show, but just Birmingham generally, to see what it was like. And they were like, oh, we'll come and run an event while we're here. So I think that's what he tends to do. He said he was up to, I want to say 93 marathons. He's trying to get to 100, and he's sort of going on holidays and chucking a run in while he's there. And they sort of questioned the fact that it was on a Friday, sort of asking whether this essentially was like an English thing. So I had to rest assured that no, 99% of our runs are on Saturdays and Sundays. This is the odd bit, but worked perfectly for him. So this is another reason to have midweek events, so that you can then go on holiday, run on the Friday, and have the Saturday and Sunday free to explore the other city. So, if there's any people overseas that are looking to set up a Big Bear satellite company, get in touch. But that was quite cool. He was top bloke, running really well. He did, I want to say, 11 laps. Yes, he did do 11 laps, and he did it in the quickest time. A few others did 11 laps as well. I should have the results to hand, and that would have made more sense. So Jeremy did 11 laps in 5:34, and then Ben, Josh, Rachel, and Jess also did 11 laps. So that's good going. So 11 laps is 33 miles, just in case you weren't sure on the distances. So that was good. And then Louise and her sister were both training for the Cov Way as well. Louise comes and runs in our events quite a lot, normally with dogs, but a bit windy to be out with the dogs, and it adds complications when they wanted to get the distance in. Louise's sister, whose name has just escaped me, which is excellent, is doing Nicola, that's it. Nicola, they're doing the Cov Way, or Coventry Way, sorry, which is a 40-mile circular route that happens early April, sells out really quickly, really popular. I've done it a handful of times. Got my awards behind me somewhere. And really just nice event. If it's wet, pretty grim going across the farmers' fields, but on a dry year, beautiful event to run in. Just run by the LDWA, nice people, but good event. So it's the first time that Nicola has gone over, I want to say, over half marathon distance. She's not run a marathon, and she's going straight to 40 miles. So our events are really good for that. Much like when Phil's talking and he's using it as training for OCC, fine, Daventry isn't going to help you run in the Alps, but using our events for effectively supported long runs is a great way to get out, because who wants to do 5 mile laps coming back to their house every 5 miles, to then restock on supplies, or having to rely on the post office and the petrol station and things like that. If you can come to our events, we'll look after you. You can come in your race kit with all your gear on your back, but you don't have to have it the whole time. So you can get your long run in, and you don't have to have 5 litres of water to do you for a 5-hour run or whatever you're doing. we'll stock all that up for you, the same as you'd get at an aid station when you're out doing OCC, I assume. I don't know, but I assume so. So yeah, so it's just a good way to do it. So yeah, Daventry Country Park will be returning next year. I don't know exactly when, so we might try and switch around the Ryton Pools and the Daventry event, because we're restricted at Daventry by the car park. So I could have sold another 30 or 40 places to Friday's event, because that was what was on the waiting list. And I sort of stopped promoting it effectively in the last 2 weeks because it had sold out. So I'm pretty sure I had 25, 30, I think, on the waiting list by the end. So they would have been sales. But the car park only held 110 cars, which I didn't really realise until I'd already sold 130 places, which is normally the restriction. Normally the restriction is the medals and small car parks. Well, Daventry Country Park isn't really a small car park, and I don't think we've been there and sold an event out, I don't think. So it's not really something I thought about. And then we went over there for a junior park run, and I was like, hang on, the car park's not massive, is it? So we counted up the spaces, but apparently officially it's 110 spaces. So there were spaces there this week, so it was fine. It wasn't an issue. But if I'd have sold another 30 places and a few of the people that didn't turn up did turn up, because you never quite know, would have been a bit stuck. And I never, ever, ever want to put an event on where you can't park in the car park like you thought you're going to, because then people won't trust the next time I put an event on, and they'll worry about the parking and things like that. And the whole point of what I'm doing here is to try and put events on where you've got no stress. I hate it when you go to an event, it says there's event parking and then it's full up, or they charge you 15 quid that you weren't expecting, or it's a 5-mile walk to the aid station. Especially when I was doing triathlons, and the car park would be miles away, and you've got all your kit, all your gear, your bike, all your transition. It's a nightmare. So I won't put events on like that. I'd rather not take the money, knowing that every time you turn up, it's going to be what it should be and what I said it was going to be. So there we go. So that was Daventry Country Park. That was the Squirrel Challenge. It'll be back next year. Details coming out in a few months' time. So, having unloaded the van on the Friday night, having managed to take the van back just before they closed on the Friday night, Saturday morning, I went off to the running show, and I'd said, or the National Running Show at the NEC, to give it its full title. I'd said on the last episode that I was going to try and get some video of people and whatever, try and effectively interview a few people, just, big bear people. But it's a nightmare. It's so busy in there. And given that I've already said about making sure this sounds good, I think an incredibly busy hall at the NEC doesn't really make for the best acoustics. So I didn't bother with any of that. So apologies. You'll get no people saying, yeah, it's all right, in different accents and tones, because essentially that's probably what everybody would have said when I was chatting to them. It's not really my thing. So it was really busy. They're saying that it's the biggest one they've done with the most amount of people. I've got no reason to think that they're wrong. It felt really busy. It felt bigger than last year as well. So I assume it probably was. But it's just so busy, so much stuff. People trying to sell magic potions, and clearly somebody's found a supplier of backpacks that you can then get branded up for your own stuff, and they've realised that they can make a really good turnaround on it, good markup on it, because there must have been 4 or 5 stands there that were just sort of trail running kit. So they'd got t-shirts, they'd got buffs, they'd got hats and things, and these backpacks, but they all look the same, but just with a different logo on. So it's just, which feels really disingenuous. I appreciate that's just how the world works, but I found it really stark to sort of wander along and just see these just replicas just with effectively different stickers on the front. But it's not for me. It's really busy. So I went and helped out on the Petzl stand for a little bit, mainly in my Centurion role rather than my Big Bear role. Centurion are sort of quite tied in with Petzl and some of the, I guess, sister brands to Petzl. So if you were there during the lunch hours on Saturday, you might have had some of my expert advice on head torches. Petzl ones are good and they're bright. But it's just, it's really busy. It's really busy. Every year I look at it and I think there's 30,000 people, however many there are, half an hour away from my house. They're all like running. This has got to be a golden opportunity for me to sort of spread the word and get entries. And to have a small, so sort of like a 3x3 metre setup is thousands of pounds. So it's not £1,000, multiple. I won't give away their trade secrets. I don't know how much of it's meant to be public, but I know how much it is because I've inquired before. And I've got no idea how you're meant to recoup that money. And I appreciate these sorts of things. It's not about, this has cost, for instance, £10,000, so I need to make £10,000 in sales. I know it's not quite that simple, but I don't know how much brand awareness I can get that's worth multiple thousands of pounds, let alone then having to dress the actual stand, because it really, some of them look brilliant, some of them look homemade, and the difference just is the difference between having a good show and a bad show. So you've got to put the money in to make it look good, then you've got to put the time in to actually make it look good as well. So you've got to be there all weekend. It's quite intense in that respect. I just don't know how to make it work. However, what I did see, which looked really quite good, I think much better than previous years, was the Race Nation event village. So when I've looked at it previously, I've essentially seen, so the race village, for those of you that didn't go, effectively they have quite a big area, and then there's different event companies have what essentially is a podium that they stand behind with their event stuff on the front, and one of them standing behind essentially trying to sell their stuff. But when I've looked at it in the past, it's very much looked like a load of people trying to catch people's eye as other people run away so they don't have to engage, and it's looked a bit lonely. Whereas this year, when I was looking, every time I went around, it was busy. Every time I went around, people were talking to the people that were there. And so, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I would sign up to an event on a whim based off a logo, because that's all you've got to really show on the front. So I don't know if it was people who'd done those events who essentially knew the organisers and were going to sort of say hello and be friendly, or if they did well on their sales. I mean, it's the companies that were there were comparable size to me. There were some that were bigger as well, like Threshold were there. They get tons. That's the Race to the Series lot. They're obviously very, very big, but there were other smaller companies there. Runaway Racing, Chris Bradley, who's involved with the Centurion as well. He was there. He's sort of similar size. Race Harborough, local to here. They're similar size, I'd suggest. Not loads bigger. Russellbach were there, similar size. So it'll be interesting to see how they got on. I'll see if I can find out directly from them. But it would be really interesting to know what other people think, essentially what you would do. Would you sign up to an event on the day just by wandering around? Or even maybe you wouldn't sign up on the day, but would you be more likely to sign up if you chatted to the man or woman that runs it and it seemed like it was nice? I just don't know how to extract value out of it, having paid out not much for those pods, nowhere near as much, but it's still 2 days of effort. It's a weekend away from the family. As soon as I miss a Sunday, that disrupts the kids' football and other sports and things like that. So it's still quite a commitment if it isn't that much in money. But it'd be really interesting to know what people think, because I just can't. Every time I come back with my flapjackery, so I'm always happy about that. But every other point about being there, I'm like, this doesn't really feel like I've got much out of it. I tried to go and see Anna Harding at the, I don't know what stage she was at one of the stages she was hosting. Didn't see her anywhere. I didn't even see her presenting, actually, so she would have been about somewhere. But everywhere was just so busy that you couldn't sort of just like mill about and catch somebody's eye. Tried to see Ali as well. I didn't even see her at the village green section. That was just so... I think they effectively had to stop people from coming in. That could have done with being 4 times bigger, as could a lot of the other bits as well. It just seemed, maybe that's how events work. Maybe I don't know how the conference events scene works, but if you've got stages that are rammed with 3 or 4 deep people standing around the outside, I don't think that's a good thing. That to me feels like a bad thing. And so then the only people who could then sort of sit down and see anything were I don't know how to phrase it, very fanatical. So I'd imagine the people that sort of do go and do the handshaking and saying hello to people were quite intense. So I'd imagine it's quite a long day for those that that people want to talk to. So if you're Damien Hall or Hannah Rickman and things like that, I'd imagine it's quite intense to be there, because there's just a lot of very, very eager people that have been waiting 20 minutes to say hello. So they don't just want to say hello, they want to get everything out. So I'd imagine it's quite intense. But yeah, it'd be interesting. I really would genuinely like to hear people's thoughts on what they think of the show, whether they think I could do something that's worthwhile. I mean, I walk around as I am now, sort of in Big Bear stuff. It's nice to say hello to people. Spoke with Alan and a few of the Sphinx guys and Becky and Dan that we see every year at the running show. Dan says he listens, right, Dan? So it's, you know, it's nice to see people when you're not having to be sort of like manically looking at laptops working during the event and things. But I never feel like I really make the best out of that place. There's no point in doing like a flyer drop because you're not the only person that's thought of it. There's very, very few flat surfaces to put things down on. So where everybody has coffee, people flyer it, and then the staff just come along with a big bin bag and just dump it all in there. Or there's so many flyers on the table, it's redundant. It's just absolute noise. So it's difficult to know how to make the best out of it. So it'd be interesting if anybody's got any thoughts on that. So, run show done. First event done. Next event, the Rhino Challenge. Depending on how quickly I can edit this together, it might have sold out. If it's not sold out, there's less than a handful of places left. Currently, there are 4 places left. So there's a good chance they'll go before this goes out. Apologies if that's the case. I have been telling people for a long time. So the Badger Challenge, which will be the next available event, that is on, I'm going to get the day wrong now. It's on the 27th. Let me just make sure I get the right day. It's on the 27th of February at Beacon Hill Country Park, which is Thursday. So Thursday the 27th, Beacon Hill Country Park. The clue's in the name. It's a big hill. But because it's a lapped event, you go up the hill and then you've got a beautiful downhill. Really, really nice event. That's selling well, so I would suggest you want to get in on that. So that has probably only got 20 places left by the time this goes out. It's a couple over 20 at the moment, so we're selling a few every day at the moment. So that looks like it's going to sell out, which is awesome. Elephant Challenge at Salty Forest is on Friday the 7th of March. That's doing well considering it's still over a month away. Salty Forest events, I'm saying it wrong, Southsea, I'm going to go with Southsea. Southsea Forest events always sell out. Got really, really good support in Northampton and Milton Keynes, so I wouldn't hang around to enter that one either. But I won't go through all the events. Go online. If you want to enter an event, enter it. Remember, you can get a deferral or you can get credit back onto your account up to 7 days before. So if your plans change, you're not going to lose your money. Just give me 7 days notice. I think that's the rule. So I think that's a fair rule to have as well. So, winners. We did our Jump Ship Brewing a competition on Instagram and Facebook and via the email list as well, and hundreds of you entered, which is excellent. It's amazing what happens when you say you're going to give away free beer. So the prize was, and I've not got it in here, but the prize was a case of their beers, which is really cool. So a case of their beers and free entry into any of my events as well. So I did a draw, and the person that won that was Claire Upton. So well done, Claire. Conveniently, you're actually at the next event. So I'll bring that along to the Rhino Challenge, and you can have your beers. So thank you very much for everybody for entering. Really good to get our beers, our new non-alcoholic beers out, and lots of good conversations with people about them being non-alcoholic. So I drink. I don't really have any issues with drinking at all, but I know there are lots of people that do, and so I'm pretty pleased to be able to then give people, not have to make anybody think about any of that at the end of an event. I don't want to do that. That's never the intention. But having those non-alcoholic beers that taste really nice, like it's a very nice drink. Whether it's got alcohol in it or not is irrelevant. It is a nice tasting drink. So I'm really pleased to be able to give those out. And the cans are quite cool. The cans are quite nice. Again, I've not got one here to show, but the cans are nice. So it's good. So I'm really pleased to have them out. Again, if you did race on, or if you did come to the event on Friday, let me know what you think of the beers. Hopefully you like them as well. So we're going to end on a slightly sad note. So the flapjack that we give out at the events, that we've been given out at the events from event 1 all the way up to now, they have been baked. Some people think that I make them, which is, I guess, flattery and just wrong, really. So I don't make them. I can bake, I can cook, but I can't make them as well as that. So Paul from Rugby Real Bread, he has been making them from day one for us, which started from me knowing him a little bit, because I used to go and buy flapjack from him every Friday when he had a market stall at Rugby Market. And then I said to him, do you think you could do these for me? Which was fine, because he was doing 50 of them 4 times a year when we first started in 2018. Then as it all got bigger, he was fine doing more. That was all good, because he could add it on to what he was doing every week for the stall anyway. During COVID, he then changed what he was doing business-wise. So rather than having a stall and selling that way, he now teaches people to do the baking and do the cooking and all that. His classes are brilliant. I've been on his classes. His stollen from his classes is genuinely some of the nicest food I've ever had. I tell him this every Christmas. Stollen week is 2 weeks before Christmas, I believe. So I make sure that I send a message, how are you? So I can get my stollen 2 weeks before Christmas, because it's amazing. Anyway, I digress. So he hasn't baked for people to sell stuff since COVID. He's only been doing stuff for us, and he's now got other work, other jobs, other responsibilities. His kitchen that he had in his garage, he doesn't have anymore. So to do our baking is more hassle than it's worth. So he's going to stop doing the flapjacks. So we're not going to have flapjacks on our finish line after the Elephant Challenge on the 7th of March. So I know that people will be genuinely annoyed, sad and annoyed that they're not going to get their flapjack, because it is really nice and people do really, really like it. So I would suggest that if you do like it, enter one of the events, order the extra flapjack that you can get in what effectively is a takeaway foil tray, that size, like you get for a curry, and cut it up and put it in the freezer. So it freezes really well. I mean, don't order 50 of them, but if you've got 2 trays, they'll freeze for about 3 months, and they taste lovely when they come out. We always have a few left over after each event. When it's 2 or 3, they seem to disappear on the drive home. But when there's 10, 15, so I mean, off the back of Friday's event, I think there were, and because I bought stuff from Flapjackery, there are about 15 pieces left over, and so I've chucked them in the freezer this morning. They last for a long time, so we always freeze some. So if you do like them, freeze them, and much like with your wedding cake, maybe have a bit of flapjack when your firstborn is christened, or whatever you're going to do with your wedding cake. I can't remember. But yeah, so sad news. Paul's been brilliant, just a good person, but he's been brilliant for all the Big Bear stuff. I know everybody, well, I say everybody, I know 99.9% of people like the flapjack. But yeah, that's going to stop. So I don't think, at present, it's going to be replaced with anything. Because I don't want to just go out and buy a Mars bar and chuck that in, because that's not really the point. The point was, it was meant to be locally made, nice, handmade type stuff, not just more stuff. It was meant to be nice product. So at the moment, it's not going to be replaced with anything. We might replace it with things in the future, potentially, but at the moment, I don't know. I haven't got any. I only really found out this week, but I was telling people at the Squirrel Challenge. So I don't want to tell some people, but not everybody. And this is your privilege, having listened to the podcast and got all this way. I apologise again, but got all this way so you can get to find out first as well. I will tell people via socials during the week at some point. But yeah, it is sad and I'm disappointed, but I'll be honest, I sort of thought this was coming for the last 3 years. So it is sort of well overdue. And so a huge thank you to Paul for all of the baking and all of the help. He'll still be coming to some of the events to help. He comes along to Trailfest, Cannock Chase, helps me up there because he's just a good bloke. But yeah, sad news. So that is the end of episode 2. Apologies, it's quite a long one, but there are 2 bits of things to talk about. So as I said originally, I'm not just going to put loads of podcasts out for the sake of it, just because it's a Wednesday or whatever. I'll put things out when there's stuff to say. However, we've only got a week until the Rhino Challenge. So the plan is, again, to try and get some video and things around that. Hopefully I'll get the microphones to work this time, which should be handy, so you can hear them better. So it's all going to improve every time. I promise it will get better, not worse. And then I'll put another podcast out probably in about a week, summing up what's happened from there. If you've not entered, and there are places, enter now, because it will sell out. There's barely any places left. So I've just sold 2 more just now. So there's even less places than there were at the beginning of when I started to record the podcast, let alone by the time you get to hear it. Thank you very much. Hopefully this is an improvement on last time. If you do enjoy it, do tell people. Even better if they've never run in my events before, because it's just something for them to listen to. It helps them get into it, and hopefully helps them come along to another one, and so then they do get into themselves. Subscribe so you make sure you get them, because they come out so regularly, and it would be great to have some comments. I'm not fussed what you write anything, but put a 5-star review and comment somewhere, YouTube or Spotify. I think it helps with rankings and coming up on searches for things as well. So it'd be really handy. Awesome. Thank you very much. And until next time, I'll speak to you soon.